Well, here we are, the conclusion of Wentworth, the 100th episode of a drama series that has shaken viewers to the core, right across the world. It's been an astonishing journey, not just for all those loyal fans, but for everyone involved on both sides of the camera. The extraordinary cast, the creative teams, technicians, the brilliant writers and directors, and all of the teams at Foxtel and Fremantle. Today, we're taking the opportunity to bid Wentworth farewell and celebrate what a phenomenon it has been. I'll be speaking with cast members, both recent and original, as well as some of the talented people behind the scenes and the author of a brand new Wentworth book. But before we speak with some of the cast from The Final Sentence, here's another glimpse at what you can expect from the last episode. For a very emotional final episode, that's for sure. Joining me now are three of the stars of this final season, Kate Box, Radawoy Hick and Jane Hall. Good to see you all.
Hello, Brian.
Hello, Brian.
Hi, nice to see you all. Look, it's been almost a year, I guess, since camera wrapped on Wentworth. Kate, let me ask you, what do you remember most vividly of those final days of shooting?
Yeah, it was pretty epic, Brian. It was, it was massive adrenaline. I think we were all very acutely aware that we were a part of something incredible coming to a close. So it was really emotional. There were a lot of kind of big farewells and then also really, micro ones. The last time I'm going to eat a cold piece of toast from the Babe Marie in the dining room, that kind of thing. Last time I'm putting on my Chucky Dax. It was freezing. It was bloody. And I think everybody was so determined to go out giving it absolutely everything that they had. So there was massive passion given to it from everyone and a few tears as well. Yeah.
Kate, your character is so intense and so unhinged. I guess it's part of the discipline of an actor, right? That you can be that persona when the cameras roll, but the minute the cameras stop, you've got all of those emotional things happening because you're shooting the final episode of the show.
Yeah, you'd hope that they'd all stop. We'd be in for some trouble, my poor children, if it didn't. Yeah, it's great. You find ways to turn off at the end of every day. But while you're there, you just want to relish in being able to play the madness that you could never play out in your own life. And so you kind of want to make the most of all the crazy and all the love and all the revenge and all the kind of things that make a really juicy villain driven by such love and heartache. So yeah, when you're there and you're doing it, it's something to totally live every second of.
Radawoy and Jane, you were there on the very last day of filming. Without giving us any spoilers, what was it like that very last day?
You go, Rad.
Oh, goodness. The very last day, I think when I reflect back on that day, I didn't expect to be so emotional. You give so much of yourself to a character, and I'd been there since season 6, and it was, I don't even know how to describe it really. But it's definitely a family, and I still to this day miss everybody and miss being in that machine. Once you're in it, like I said, you give it your all, and it's really hard to say goodbye. Just what Kate was saying, that last time you put on the teal and then taking it off and putting it into the laundry basket and going, okay, bye, Ruby. That was really difficult to walk away from that set.
Yeah, I bet. And Jane Hall, it was your character, Anne Reynolds, that was such a departure for you. Did you relish in playing that role?
Yeah, I did. It's playing essentially a baddie is something that I've never really done before. I've always been the kind of Australia's good girl. So, yeah, I was able to access some really dark parts of my personality that frankly surprised me. And I did it all with sort of ease that I never But yeah, it's still hard though with the fans, because as you know, the fans are just such a monumental part of Wentworth. And you know, I'm always getting messages from people saying, "We don't like you," and I'm like, "Hang on a second, this is not what that's not what I'm used to. You know, I'm a nice person."
Does it
But
make you
then
want to do more?
pardon?
Does it make you want to do more of that?
Yeah, oh gosh. I mean, but this was a once in a lifetime opportunity for me, and one I absolutely relished. And I hope that more kind of treacherous, objectionable characters do come across my desk. I will be happy to give them a crack. I'm naturally a much more light-hearted person than Anne is, and yeah, I really had to buckle down and understand her in order to play such a broken down, confused, heavy kind of character, conflicted kind of character.
Yeah.
But just going back to the last day, I just wanted to say how wonderful it was. I was there the last day. I've only been in the last 2 seasons, which makes me very fresh. But I loved how, as we worked through the scenes, and when you record, you don't record anything in order. You never film in order. But everyone stayed behind even after their scenes had finished in order to stand around with the crew and clap everyone off as one by one we each completed our last scene on that day. And that's something that doesn't happen often in a lot of productions, that level of camaraderie, and that amazing support from cast and crew was a very, very special experience. I know we all felt that way.
Yeah, and Jane, and you, of course, you were filming all that through a pandemic, which, you know, intensifies the emotion of a group being together, I imagine.
Absolutely. And we came together very early on when, you know, when COVID started to hit and we had no idea what was ahead of us before the very first lockdown. And as a cast, we all agreed that we didn't want to compromise this show, the integrity of the characters and the writing. And we wanted to go full steam ahead and really make no concessions as far as performance goes for the pandemic. So we really bonded on that, and we committed to regular testing. We committed to everything that we possibly could, and to stay in our little production bubble in order to bring Wentworth, in order to round off Wentworth the way it should have been finished.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Radawoy, there's a lot going on for your character in this final season. You've got Rita back on your side, but of course you have all these wonderful moments with Boomer. And it was a beautiful friendship that you and Boomer have inside Wentworth. Did playing those affectionate, warm scenes counterbalance to some of the intensity of other scenes that was required of your character?
Yeah, I think, you know, starting Wentworth, Ruby Mitchell was, you know, young and immature and quite aggressive. And her outlet was, you know, boxing and a lot of violence. And it was nice to see a completely, a completely different side to Ruby, and for her to sort of grow and mature along the way, and play with a bit of comedy with the amazing Katrina, and seeing this really great friendship grow between Ruby and Boomer. And yeah, it was nice. It was fun, you know, it was fun to go into work. And sometimes, you know, it can be quite intense having to play, maybe, you know, you would know this, Kate, you know, having to be someone who's angry all the time, your character's who's angry. So it was nice to come into work and be a little bit more playful and play with some comedy.
Now, as a very proud Indigenous Australian, you must be so rewarded that a show like this profiles some of our great First Nations people, and the storylines, of course, that are so relevant.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Wentworth has had amazing Indigenous cast members, from Sharina to Hunter, Jada, you know, all these amazing actors who came through before Leah and I arrived. So it's important. Representation does matter, and I am a proud Indigenous woman, and it's I love to represent my people in, it was always fun for Leah and I to bring in a lot of traditional content into the show. I think with the Crow Man and the singing our father's spirit back to, the next dimension and all of that sort of stuff was really important just for the world to see what our culture is and how, we're the such a strong culture that we have here in Australia. It's an honour to show that.
Absolutely, and you've been such an integral part of the Foxtel Wrap program, and thank you for that. Kate, Lou has been such a tremendous force during these final 2 seasons. She's capable of vicious brutality, but also deep love. What was it like playing both sides of the character?
Yeah, I mean, it's a total gift when you get a role like Lou. I think all good villains have some kind of epic love story in them, because it's, something that breaks them is what kind of feeds their heinous acts, I suppose. But I think playing such a strong love story, it just gives you such conviction to back the terror that you rain down. And so that just feeds you a lot of courage as an actor and as a character to know why you're doing something. I mean, not that Lou didn't kind of enjoy the, general terror for shits and giggles that she just put out there in the world, but I think so much of her massive acts were based around that love. And playing someone that driven, even though you may not agree with everything that they do, is really beautiful. And I think that, obviously the heartache in losing Reb really humanized such an operatic villain, and that was a total treat as well. So yeah, I mean, I can't imagine getting another character who gets to live in such a massive world as what Lou did. Yeah.
Kate, what sort of reaction did you have from your family and friends to Lou?
There was a lot of jokes about people being a little bit afraid, but you also saw a genuine little bit of fear in their eyes as well. People, knowing that, my family, knowing I had a temper as a child, suddenly seeing it realised as a fully grown woman, I think it was a little bit terrifying for them. When my daughter started school, just after the first season aired, and there was a few moments in the schoolyard where you feel like you shouldn't be there, because who would let someone like that in here around small vulnerable people? A few sideways glances and a little bit of fear, but mostly support. Yeah, I think.
Must have made school pickup kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's not that many people at Kiss and Drop where I am. Yes, I get the road to myself. Yeah.
Well, now listen, before we wrap up, the three of you, as I mentioned, were there for the final day. But let me ask you this: how do you think fans will react to the final episode? Jane?
Oh, there's already been so much conjecture about this, and the fans are already at fever pitch. So it's hard to know how we would ever be able to bring them something that will absolutely sate every one of them. But I think they will be divided between sort of heartbreak and fury.
Heartbreak and fury.
Yeah, but there's a few really. We haven't seen it, Brian. Don't forget, none of us have seen it.
Right,
so we don't know what's made it into the final ep. But there's some loose ends tied up that really needed to be. I'm just going to say
that. Right away, Kate, any more to add?
Yeah, I mean, the body count isn't modest, so there's that. So, whether people are disappointed in that or utterly thrilled by that, I suppose it depends on the bodies.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't creep away from you. It definitely slams you in the face, which, it should do. Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your extraordinary performances, not just this season, but all of your time at Wentworth. You've definitely lifted the bar. You're three of the most gifted actors in the country, and we're so proud to be associated with you. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
We moved on. When the cameras rolled on Wentworth back in 2012, I don't think our next guests could have known that their life on show would continue for many seasons to come, right up, in fact, until this final scene. Next up, I'll be talking to Katrina Milosevic, aka Boomer, and Kate Atkinson, the tireless governor, Vera Bennett, who have been with the series from the very beginning. Also joining the chat will be original and much-loved cast members Daniel Cormack, Celia Ireland and Nicole De Silva.
What's it like? Knowing you're gonna die. This is it, freak. This is for every life you've taken or fucked over.
Sorry to spoil your little plan. Look at you now, you're so small. Like a little old lady.
Don's gone missing, and I'm the only one who seems to give a shit.
Why are you so concerned about him, Liz?
Because I love him.
I love you. I love you.
Gosh, what an unforgettable scene that was. One of the most beautiful scenes, I think, in all of the seasons of Wentworth. Well, right now we say hi and welcome Katrina, Kate, Danielle, Celia and Nicole. Great to see you all.
Hello.
Hi, Brian.
Brian.
Good to see you. First of all, are you still crying there?
Oh, do I ever stop? Apparently I don't. So I think it's me every time.
Let me ask you, because it's beautiful to see on the screen here, you know, the alumni of Wentworth and, you know, cast members still present. Let me ask you firstly, do you all stay in touch with each other?
Yep.
We were actually just texting, all just texting before we got on today. So yes.
Was it quite a special? I mean, we just heard before that Jane Hall talked about what the amazing camaraderie. I mean, you're all seasoned performers. Was it a very special place, and was it a very special time doing this series, Danny?
Yes, of course. I it's got me in the feels as well. Is that the expression these days? I think, you know, from that very first day when no one really knew each other, well, I certainly didn't know everyone, and I'd met a couple of the actors previously, but only fleetingly, for us to arrive on set with this huge journey ahead of us, and just to see now, and I was just watching you interviewing some of the other actors on the show now, you know, with having the penultimate episode having aired last night, and just thinking, wow, what an amazing journey. I can't, you know, I certainly would never have guessed that it would have come this far and with such gravity, and had reached such a wide audience, and to be part of something like that is truly an honour, a great honour. And, you know, just the calibre of the creatives on the show, right from the crew to the production, to the cast, everyone involved, network, you know, what an amazing journey. And
Daniel, let me take you back to the beginning when you first heard about the show. What did you feel? Can you recall how you felt at the time about being cast as Bea? And for instance, did you know anything about Prisoner?
I did. I don't want to get my mother into trouble, but I'm a Kiwi, and it used to be on television at about 2:30 in the afternoon. So I used to, put the acting skills to good use. I can't go to school today. I was only 8 or 9 years old because I wanted to stay home and watch Prisoner. In fact, most people did. And I think even then I knew innately that there was something really special about this bunch of women, these characters on television with the storylines, and also that these people, the way that these women were drawn and the way their behaviour was something I'd never seen on television before. So it really stayed with me. The show itself, the energy with which it was drawn, the storylines that they tackled. Even at that young age, I knew that it was something really unique. And so when I heard the whispers on the wind that it was going to be made into a contemporary version of the show, I stayed there like a wolf eyeing the chicken from the bracken, like who's going to put this on? When are they putting it on? And I'm going to dive on them because I have to be part of the show. I wanted to be part of a show that had a fantastic array, especially of female characters. So I'm very happy when I got the role, and I fought for it. I was absolutely chuffed, and as they say, the rest is history, and I'm super proud to have been part of the show and to have played a character like Beastman.
Danielle, one of the fascinating things that I read about you in the new Wentworth book that's out is the transition of your character Bea, both physically and psychologically. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you did? I understand that you changed up your cell, for instance, changing, some of the iconography and the postcards, and because you wanted to really immerse yourself in the change for Bea.
Yeah, I think it's there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes with actors, that perhaps just little details, and I know that I'm not the only one that that would invest in how their costume looked, or what was going on their drawing board and their cell, the kinds of things that they were drawn to, or the things that brought their character inspiration. For me, say for example, at the beginning there was an empty board, there was nothing there, and then maybe it was one photograph of Debbie, because that was the central and most important thing in Bea's life. And by the end, there was a lot of I had chosen a lot of pictures of the universe and the solar system and the cosmos, and funnily enough, I did that even before I'd found out that Bea was going to meet her greater good, so that fitted her tragic end anyway, but just all those little things, like how did the costume fit? At the beginning of the series there was a lot of room there, she wasn't comfortable in her clothes there, nor she didn't fit into the situation in her mind, and then by the end everything was fitting, like my hair fading, all those kinds of things. They always tell a little story. Every detail should help support the story that the character's on, or that story arc. And I love involving myself in that creative element.
And a beautiful job. Now, Celia, as the clip reminded us, your departure from Wentworth was a real punch to the stomach for fans, but in its way also incredibly beautiful. I haven't spoken to you about this before, but let me ask you today, do you remember how you felt on that morning of the day that you had to go and do that incredible scene with Katrina?
Yeah, look, it had come at the end of a fairly emotional roller coaster for Liz. Like, she'd seen her son, she told him about her dementia, she had Frankie visit her and she didn't recognise her. And so by the time she has the siege happens, then she has a stroke. I think for Liz, she was incredibly ready to leave. She wanted to die. And Katrina, I don't know about you, but I don't remember us talking about the scene much.
No.
I think it was we knew that it would be so difficult that we just sort of didn't really. Normally, most of us would get together and we'd chat about scenes, but with that we really didn't. And I think it was
At all.
we just left it for the day.
Wow.
And beautiful Kev Carlin. I mean, I always say to people that I think Katrina had the lion's share in that scene, and because I was sort of immobilised with the locked-in syndrome. But it was really hard not to cry while the camera was on Kat. I remember having to really stifle my emotion watching her. It was. I think it was one of those interesting moments where it's not what you expect it's going to be, in a weird way, but very, very emotional. And it came off the back of a series of very big, heartfelt, emotional events for Liz.
And Katrina, wow, it really, what the emotional impact it must have had on you as an actor.
It still does. It still does, Brian. In fact, I had to talk about this scene the other day, and weirdly enough, Seals, who I do think is quite psychic, she texted me, and I sort of rang her straight away and said, I'm just so glad you're still alive. Because it's just so awful reliving that again, because I think, we had isolated it, and not like normally, as Seal said, we would talk about every scene and nut it out and, have especially in rehearsal on set. And but that one we just didn't touch at all. And I don't know if it's because we couldn't or we just wanted to see, like we knew that the feelings were there and just see whether they'd come out on the day, and sure enough, they didn't hold back on the day.
No, it was beautiful. Now, Nicole, great to see you. Frankie, gosh, what can we say about Frankie? Had such a dynamic arch in the show, in prison, out of prison, becomes a lawyer, goes back to prison, escapes. Were you constantly surprised by the opportunities this character created for you?
Yeah, I think initially probably. You don't expect. I think with Frankie, there always felt like she was always striving to the next thing. She was always in hard pursuit of something. And I think that lent itself to all those surprises you speak about. I certainly relished it and loved every second of it. But the more we went along, the more I realised how rich Frankie was as a character, and that's certainly for all the characters on the show. And I'm definitely biased, and I'm probably Frankie's biggest advocate. But I have to say, I think even at the end of my time at Wentworth, I still felt like there was a whole world for Frankie to be lived, because she just kept on building upon herself, and she was really that kind of character.
Yeah. What's it meant for you as an actor, Nicole, playing in Wentworth?
Everything. It's really been one of the pinnacles of my career, and certainly going into it, I would never have thought that it would have been that necessarily. You kind of go into a show and you're always hoping for the best, but you don't know what it's going to deliver. And I think that world and that character and my fellow castmates and the family behind the scenes as well, it has become a cornerstone of my career, of who I am as a person, and now of how the world relates to me. Like, the Wentworth fan base is huge and thriving and so loyal and supportive, and they still to this day reach out. So I have a lot to thank, for Wentworth and Frankie having come into my life.
Beautiful. Now, Kate, Vera is one of those characters who just couldn't catch a break. So many terrible, stressful things happened to her over the years. What were some of the most difficult scenes for you to play over all of these 9 seasons?
Look, I was certainly man or woman handled quite a bit, and I suppose sliding over in vinegar and delivering a baby in a siege and having a hypodermic needle to the neck and shiv to the pregnant belly and all of that kind of stuff. But I think the hardest thing about Vera is that a lot of that stuff is physical. You get into a zone, and it's all about your physicality and your breathing, and you stop thinking and you get into a zone, and it makes those scenes a little bit out of body and in a sense a little bit easier for me. I'm an overthinker and an over-preparer, and I think the hardest parts, I can't tell you specific scenes, but I think the most difficult things for Vera were early on, the scenes where she is the most oppressed, when you feel like she's making the weakest choices, when she's most manipulated by other people. As an actor, it's really easy to, judge a character, and in an environment where there's a lot of bravado and status and physical violence, I was playing someone with this terrible internal punishment. And it was the hardest scenes were the ones where I had to play her and try and understand her and not judge her, and to really embrace the fact that I was playing one of the most unheroic characters in the show. And I think once I surrendered to that, those scenes became easier. I hope that doesn't sound dull and wanky, but...
Not at all. In fact, Kate, I read in TV today, that irrespective of what happens in the final episode next week, if anything untoward were to happen to your character, there would be a public outcry. I think such is the affection for Vera Bennett. Would you agree?
I'm thrilled by that. I think, she's an unlikely survivor.
Yeah.
She's through wiles and, rising out of the ashes of all kinds of cruelty. I think she's an unlikely survivor. And I thank the writers for giving her that journey. And I'm glad that it resonated with people, because, she wasn't the person you perhaps thought would. Well, we don't know. There's one more episode to go, but we don't know. But look, I hope she survives. We all hope she survives. But I always found it intriguing that people would say to me, "Oh, do you want Vera to have a happy ending?" And I was like, "Well, you tell me what a happy ending is. You wanted to get married to a bloke and have more kids and have the picket fence, or do you want her to, walk out of this prison with her head held high and doing things on her own terms?" I don't know.
Yeah.
You decide.
Yep. Well, now, talking of affection, there's an outpouring of affection for Boomer. Katrina, I just want to ask you, you are so masterful at capturing this character over so many seasons. How did you create, and how did you mould, and how did you protect that character of Boomer, who's been such an integral part of the heart and soul of this show?
I just got so lucky. I got so lucky because, the genius of Wentworth is not only, I think, the concept of a female-driven series and a series full of women who could easily be your next-door neighbour, and who will do, begs the question, what won't they do to survive? But also, how do you find love in that environment? And they all did. I think that's spectacular, and the genius of the characters within that were that we each filled a certain role. We were not even archetypes of society, but there was a balance there between us all, and Boomer's part in that, I think, was well, there were all the heart, but she got to traverse the levity as well as the pathos, and I feel incredibly lucky to have been able to embrace both ends of that spectrum. That's really rare that you get a chance to do that. And I guess I am still very protective of her, because I just love her so much. She's she's like a newborn child that's still learning, and it's amazing to watch her do that.
It was beautiful, beautiful work, Katrina. Really beautiful work. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very kind.
Another of the cast who's been in all 100 episodes is Robbie McSkeever, and as Will Jackson. Robbie couldn't be with us today. I hear he's filming in Hawaii, but I understand he was often the life of the party on the set. Just before we close, would any of you like to share your favourite Robbie story?
Oh,
I have one.
Oh, you've got one. There's so many.
Well, I'm sorry, this is just going to exclude Seals and Nick and Dan just a little bit because this happened in the very last season when we couldn't all be together. We were locked out of the set and we all spent months in isolation waiting to know if we could go back on the floor. And Robbie got stuck in Australia and couldn't get back to New Zealand. And this is actually more a story of how loved this man was by every member of the cast and crew. Typically over the course of the entire season of Wentworth, if you had a birthday, no matter who you were, cast, crew, Robbie would do something at lunchtime for you, and it would invariably involve drag. You would often get kicked out of your makeup chair because the priority was to get Robbie at lunchtime.
Yeah.
And so Robbie would put on these, and they got more and more and more elaborate as the season went on. He organised picnics. It was not about the cast. It was always about the crew and their families and how we could have parties and picnics, not wrap parties, but family picnics. Anyway, during lockdown, it was Robbie's birthday and we were all locked away from each other, and it was a really hard time. And so someone, and I can't remember who, but it will just give you an idea of how invested the entire cast and crew were in this man's happiness. Someone suggested that we pick a song, we rewrite the lyrics, and that everyone film themselves in drag or something, singing the song. Someone stupidly picked the song Bohemian Rhapsody, which is the longest song in all time.
But there are a lot of
them. Everyone went off, and I mean everyone, location managers, lighting, makeup, sound, everyone went off, recorded themselves. The editor edited it together into this incredibly elaborate film clip of us all. And then we had a Zoom meeting where Robbie could see all of us. It was like a faces of hundreds of people on the screen. Robbie could see all of us watching him watch this video that we'd made. And the lyrics were basically all about how much we loved him and how, and I actually FaceTimed him the other day. I don't think he will mind me saying he wept openly. He has the biggest heart. I don't know how, of course we would have done this show. We're professionals, we're workers, we would have got it done.
But he's the glue. He was the glue.
Not have been the same, and every cast and crew member was just completely smitten, and we love him very much.
Oh, well, it's nice that we're acknowledging him today. Kate, Katrina, Danielle, Nicole and Celia, so good to see you all. It really is. Miss you heaps. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Well, love you too. Well, with a legacy that now spans 100 episodes, Wentworth's seen a who's who of Australian talent, either locked behind bars or dishing out the discipline, or both, in Pamela Rabe's case. Our next group of guests all entered Wentworth at various points, taking the show in dynamic and exhilarating directions.
Come on. Seriously. We don't have to put up with this. If the men at Walford can get conjugal visits, then so can we. Some of us might take no for an answer, but I don't, and I won't. Hands up, who wants a room?
Hey. Stay with me. Without me, you're nothing. You're worse than nothing. You're a victim. Remember who you are.
You don't get to apologise.
But I need you to understand that something is happening to me.
I don't give a shit.
Please. When the women come for you, I won't stand in their way. I'll cheer them on.
We'll isolate the airlock. Copy that. you off the drugs, we back away.
I want to swap with Vera. You let her out and you can take me instead.
Pamela Rabe, Tammy McIntosh, Susie Porter, Kate Jenkinson and Bernie Curry, welcome to this special Wentworth event.
Hi, Brian.
Thanks for having us.
Hi, Brian.
Have you enjoyed seeing all your colleagues today? It's wonderful to get you all together.
Oh, yes.
Tell me, let me start with you, Tammy. Like Danny and Celia, your character's exit from Wentworth was one of the most shocking of all the seasons. Is it still a moment that fills you with emotion?
Absolutely. I mean, just watching that filled me with emotion because, it's been 3 years since that death. And I mean, Wentworth is just primal, like watching and remembering everything we had to do together as a family is incredible. And yes, the death was, desperately heartbreaking, but beautifully timed because, I watched it again yesterday and I hadn't seen it for years. And hindsight and objectivity, I was absolutely shocked and had my hand to my mouth, not believing what had happened after watching this beautiful woman, Kaz, who'd been so brutally abused when she was a child, who was so full of anger and, wanting to save women and save the world and didn't quite know what to do with herself and had gone through so many evolutions with the women of Wentworth. And then finally had found this beautiful state of grace. And, you don't expect it. And then, and so I was just like, God, you poor, poor darling, after everything you've been through, you finally became the pure heart and soul that you were born as. And as is Wentworth and their brilliant writing and their brilliant drama, everything is ripped away from you. It's emotional. It's emotional being here with you guys and Brian. There is something to be said about a family unit that lives through so much human trauma. I mean, we shared together things that families share, intimately and personally and deeply, deaths and illnesses and those things and the heightened emotions of the human condition that happen in the real world. We were in this bubble of intensity together. And my God, my love, respect to each of you for here and the girls that I just watched before and those to come, the greatest gift of my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Pamela, among the group, you're the only person to enter the show twice. Let me ask you, how did those two experiences differ for you?
Well, that's actually funny because I would say that I actually entered the show maybe 3, possibly 4 times because I think old Joan Ferguson has 9 lives. But each time, I mean, the writers were so clever and the producers at creating the kind of arcs for these characters. And every one of us, our characters went through huge transformation. I mean, I remember Kev Carlin very early on, I think, when I spoke to him before I came and did my screen test, I was asking kind of, what are they looking for? And Kev was giving me a rundown of what the show's about. It really was about the effect on human beings in that environment. And I think they gave us such a lot to work with and they never let us stand still. The fact that I had come in with the big bun and the badge and the uniform, I would say that when Joan came back into the series in 5 on the other side of the bars, that was a huge transformation. And then to come back again out of the box was another one. Each time it was as if the character had transformed so much. It was a real challenge to know how to still stay in contact with the character that people knew. And then it was, but there was that was my yanking on my cord. then it was a delicious challenge, but it was tricky to know just how much to let some little glimmer of the old Joan through, to keep it grounded in something consistent.
Yeah.
While everything was changing and whirling around the character. Yeah.
Pamela, I watched the episode go to air last night, and that scene where Joan comes back into Wentworth after the courtroom scene, and the intense close-up on your face, and you say so much without saying one word, the flicker of an eyelid. It's quite extraordinary, and you're such an accomplished theatre performer. It must be so different for you to perform on a stage to 1,000 people in an auditorium to playing a scene like that. That ability to change from screen to stage is quite something.
Thank you, Brian, for saying that. But I actually think they're fundamentally exactly the same thing. It's just that the audience is just that little bit closer. So it's about the knobs, but that all has to be kind of as truthful and grounded in a reality. I think they've given me so much to work with on that in that episode. I think that without lines, it was actually a great gift not to have words, because for once she had so much that she needed to absorb. And then to be able to just have a platform to do that, just kept lining up some shots and having some beautiful people to act with, whether it was David de la Tour or Kate Atkinson or whoever I ran into on the way back from that courtroom. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Joan was never black and white. You gave it such depth as a character. One of the great characters in the history of Australian television, Pamela. Congratulations.
She's slippery.
Kate, you initially came on board as a love interest for Bea, of course, but the character of Ali Novak certainly evolved from there, particularly following Bea's death. What was that journey like for you, and how did you approach the character as the different seasons went on? Because it was quite an evolution, wasn't it?
Yeah, yes, definitely. It was interesting hearing Kate Atkinson actually talk prior about how to approach a character that you don't necessarily know that you like, and that you feel potentially makes weaker choices than the characters around her, because it's sort of contrary to how you identify as yourself, or how I identify myself. And I certainly was conflicted a lot of the time with Ali and her choices, because I found her to be kind of a bystander a lot of the time. And so I really kind of had to wrap my head around, how did I make this woman interesting and powerful when she just seemed to be a character that things happened to, as opposed to a character that made things happen. But then the longer I spent with her, and the longer myself and the writers had to kind of percolate with Ali, I realized that it's intensely interesting playing a character that has not yet found their power. And further to that, not only have they not found their power, they seem to only be able to survive and thrive when they're leeching power off other people. It's actually a really, really interesting psychological space to exist for a character and for an actor. So initially, the thing that I found most frustrating about Ali was something that I ended up really relishing, her kind of her existence in this really nebulous space where she was neither weak nor strong, neither good nor bad. It was really interesting for me to play, but fortunately, the writers saw a bigger picture for her, and I really got to play this woman and this girl to woman at so many stages in her life, her psychology, her pathos, and her power. And who'd have thought? Who'd have thought that she would still be? I was going to say still be standing. That's probably not the right thing to say. But who would have thought that she would still be around when she seemed to be such an expendable character, a bit of a candle in the wind. But it was so great to be able to give her that longevity and explore that.
That memorable, beautiful scene with your character playing opposite Bea, when you looked at the sky and saw the seahorses. Is that for you one of the great memories of being in this incredible series?
Yeah, in hindsight, absolutely. I remember the day of shooting that was memorable for a completely different reason. It was about a 45-degree Celsius day. So it was stinking, stinking hot. And Dan and I were lying on the smouldering dead grass with an itchy back, and we were hating life because we were intensely uncomfortable, and we had absolutely no idea that the scene that we were filming would resonate so deeply and be the kind of, for my character anyway, the sort of lasting image that the audience remember my character by. I had no idea the effect that would have on people, and certainly I'll never look at seahorses the same.
No, I bet. But great performance, and gosh, it must have been challenging for you as an actor to play this whole last season in a wheelchair. I mean, you know, that's...
Yes, challenging, but a gift. And I think that's why this job is so special to every actor who has had the fortune of being a part of it, because this is the kind of job that you dream about as a young wannabe. You know, the kind of subject matter that you get to bite off and chew in this job is what what I dreamt about when I was starting my career at drama school. It's a dream job. And so while, yes, you're absolutely right, Brian, it was challenging, it was the best and most rewarding kind of challenge.
Yeah. And congratulations on being a mum.
Thank you very much.
Susie Porter, gosh, Mari Winter, another wonderfully complex character. Following the siege at the end of season 7 that Mari instigated, your character is in a very different situation, I should say, at the beginning of season 8 and into the final season. She goes through some pretty grueling stuff, both emotionally and physically. What were some of the most difficult scenes to play?
Yeah, definitely. So, changing from the first 2 seasons where the character had incredible amounts of power, and then coming back to having absolutely none, also being like the most hated character in the prison. And look, I actually found that the 2 seasons equally as difficult. It was interesting. I found that in my normal life, like my shoulders dropped, I would just be looking at the floor when I walked. Like I was actually kind of quite low and quite flat throughout the filming of that. And it took a while to kind of get over it in a weird way. I mean, look, I think the thing is when they say like, action, everyone is very, very focused, and then cut, we all can laugh with each other and have fun. And so, I suppose maybe the waterboarding scene was particularly uncomfortable in lots of ways. There were so many incredible kind of, I think, being thrown on the floor and spat at and food spat at you and all of that. Like it was really, God, it really affects, because the thing is they often say like the body's the unconscious mind, and, your body doesn't know the truth from the false, Yeah. So when you experience that stuff, there's a level of changing without sounding too sort of, out there about it within yourselves. And I think it does affect you psychologically.
I have to say, just personally, I felt the final scenes with you and Will, your character, I should say, Mari and Will, was just such an emotional wrench. It was just extraordinary. What we saw on air last night, just extraordinary.
Yeah. I think I felt upset, similar to what Tammy was talking about when they sort of said, look, we've decided, what is going to happen to Mari. I remember thinking of everything she's gone through. And then you're going to do this to her? I just felt really upset by it. So funny, I feel so emotional. I'm just homesick, I think. But yeah, I remember thinking you can't do that, but I just knew it was the right thing for the character, for the season, for everything, for Will. Like it was, you know, and as we talked about before, like, you know, Robbie's just such a beautiful soul, and I mean, everyone was so wonderful to work with. But yeah, I just think it was difficult to accept at the time, but then in hindsight, it was just the perfect thing, the perfect ending for that character.
Yep. Now, Bernie, your character experienced quite a turnaround as well, right? Starting off as a pretty bad guy, even killing someone, and then becoming a loving father. What was the transformation like for you?
Oh, Brian, it was, quite incredible. You know, I've sort of been reflecting upon it the last little while too. Is there a delay with this, or is it okay?
No, we're all good.
Yes, so there was a, let me just turn this down really quickly because it's coming.
We only have one bloke on today's.
Look, the word transformation, I think, is really a really poignant one, and not just for me. I think that probably everyone would have a similar what the experience was walking into Wentworth. And when you walked into Wentworth, I think you walked into and became part of a family, and that's a really strong thing in the actual show, but also offset the way that we were as a group of people, and not just the actors. It's the people working in the production office and all of the crew. I feel like we all felt like we were a family, and you know, that you can genuinely take a lot from that in terms of a transformation and a transformative experience. And even my experienced actor in the world, I would have had some sort of a transformative experience, career-wise, professionally-wise, and personally-wise, being on this show. And like I said before, the character of Jake has just been something gift. You know, it's rare as an actor that you get to play, you know, the villain and the hero in one. I know that Wentworth is a very, you know, there's a lot of strong female protagonist characters, but, you know, some of the males that had to do incredible stuff, like, of course, Robbie, people like Aaron Jeffrey and Rick Donald or Marty Sachs, or, you know, the males have sort of not necessarily played supporting roles in this. They've been supporting of the main cast in a very, you know, very big way. So transforming, yes, it's. I feel like it's, for me, it's the best job that I've ever done of my career, and being considered to use wonderful actors that I have admired for so many years in my sort of formative years of an actor is.
That's great. Do you keep any souvenirs from the set? And if so, what?
Tracksuit.
Tracksuit, Tammy McIntosh?
Steel tracksuit, bra and singlet.
Ali had photos of my personal dogs on her pin board, and I took them. Isn't that really sad that the only Wentworth memorabilia that I took were pictures of my own dogs? That's so lame.
Pamela, a question for you. One of the most talked about and epic scenes of Wentworth is when the freak cuts out Juicy Lucy's tongue. What did you think? What did you think when you read that script?
Yes. Well, I mean, there were many times you'd have to pick up your jaw off the floor when the new scripts would come out, but that definitely was one where I had to chase it around the room. It was, I mean, what a wonderful, extraordinary, horrifying thing to be asked to do. But to, you know, working with Fiona Banks, who directed that particular block of episodes, and Sally Ann Upton, to kind of work out what was essentially a beautiful ballet. You know, it was a dance to create, you know, to build something so delicate and fine about such a horrifying act. Yeah, it was great. Which is probably the reason why the thing that I did take from my Wentworth souvenir with the first thing that I took when I thought that I wasn't coming back was a bottle of hand sanitizer, which from Joan Ferguson's desk. And of course, when the pandemic broke out, I thought, yes, oh, good. I went to the cupboard and it was 3 years out of date. So I thought I'll get something with a little bit more of a shelf life. And I took my straitjacket.
There you go. Bring it out at parties, Pam.
That's right. Well, it may come in handy. Yeah. Oh boy, no. As I sit here alone, you are the first people I've spoken to probably for about 10 days. I probably should put it on now. Yeah.
Well, it's always a pleasure to speak with some of our industry's most talented artists. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Susie, Tammy, Kate and Bernie. Just wonderful to see you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Lovely
Brian.
to see you. Gosh, all the power and emotion that comes from that extraordinary cast. Well, now we're going to go behind the scenes. You know, Wentworth is one of those extraordinary shows that brings together the best writers, producers, designers, and of course, creatives to put it all together.
When the cameras are rolling and everyone's got their A game on, it's a bloody impressive place to work.
It's so much fun just going to work and working with such a fabulous crew. I know everyone says they're fabulous crews, but they really are. And working with, the most gifted actors in Australia, and you get to go to work and play with them on a daily basis. It's sort of like you have to pinch yourself. We wanted to make it different and edgy and it have a very specific Wentworth style.
Wentworth has always been a very dynamic show in terms of not only the look but the sound of it as well and the style, and it's afforded us a lot of freedom in every department really to be as creative as we possibly can within our budgets and make what I think is one of the better dramas around on TV at the moment.
Very lucky on a show like Wentworth that we get to do some big action pieces that are very cinematic, that they really raise the bar for Australian television.
Working with the people we get to work with makes it a lot easier to do the kind of subject matter that we have to deal with on the show. And you just look around and there's, Susie Porter and Kate Box and all these glorious humans and crew that make you feel so safe.
One of the themes of Wentworth's show when we set it up, which it really interested me, was the nature of human beings needing to make family wherever they go. And that's what we wanted to do in prison with the prisoners. But in the wider thing that's exactly what we've done here on set. And it is one big family. And because these actors, not just gifted actors, but beautiful, beautiful people, and so too is the crew. It's just, when you've been down on set, you will see it's just one big family.
Joining us today, producers Penny Wynn, Joe Porter and Marcia Gardner. And we welcome you all. You must have taken a trip down memory lane watching all those interviews today.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing coming in after that because there are just so many, and hearing how excited and passionate they are about it. It was pretty incredible.
Emotional too, to sort of remind ourselves of how far the show has come over that whole 100 episodes. It was great, really a bit of a treat actually for us.
Let me ask the three of you, because it has been a journey, and Marcia, you came into season 2, but Penny and Joe, as I know only too well, you were there right from the very beginning, and Penny, I remember all of those decisions, those tough decisions that got made, you and Joe Porter made on when you'd kill off characters and so on. What was the most satisfying thing for you both creatively about working on this show?
I think right at the very beginning, I think we were really, really aware of the producers, script producer, executive producer. We were all women, and the very first the cast read through afterwards, we had a meeting, and there were all women around the table. And I remember Nicole De Silva said, "Hold on, everybody! Let's just take a minute. I just want to take a minute here. Look around the table. It's all women making the show." So that was very much at the beginning, and we were really aware of it and proud of it the whole way through all 100 episodes.
Yeah, I agree. I think the female aspect of it has always been such an important thing for us all. But also, from this incredibly Australian show to sort of capture a local audience and then go on to find success globally. I think we're in nearly 200 territories now and being remade in 4 languages. It's almost part of like a second wave of where Australian content can go globally. And that's something that I'm also really proud that I was part of, this incredibly talented group of people that I was lucky enough to get to work with and be part of making that happen.
Yeah, great. Marcia, there's some pretty insane and horrific things that happen in this season particularly, but across all seasons, in fact. Was there ever a scene or a plot point that you thought might have gone a bit too far?
Brian, I'd have to say you haven't seen the stuff that we didn't shoot. I can remember way back at the very, very beginning of season 2 when the writing team first sat down to have our meeting and Penny gave us a briefing on, the brief of what Foxtel would like for Wentworth. And she said Foxtel wanted bold storytelling that encompassed characters, stories and themes that you would never see on commercial television. Well, I'd have to say that we enthusiastically embraced that. Yes, did we go too far? A tongue in a box? I think the audience will probably be the best judge of that, but at least we didn't bore them.
That's true. That's very true. But from the very beginning, I must say this, from the very beginning, Wentworth prided itself on the diversity in its cast and its storylines. So let me ask you, what are some of the topics and characters, Penny, Marcia, Jo, that you're most proud of?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, I know you were talking about it before, Marcia. I know that there's a story that you feel very strongly about.
Yes, the Liz Boomer euthanasia storyline was a really powerful and emotional story, and that one that I'm really glad we tackled. And I think, with those amazing talents of Celia and Katrina, in their hands, it was just beautifully realised. And it was probably the one thing that I actually got, letters about from audience members and saying how much they loved and appreciated that story. So for me, that was a really big one.
Yep, great. Jo?
Look, rather than one particular storyline, I'm just incredibly proud, as we said earlier, just to be able to sort of never make a compromise because a character happened to be female. And it was so bold, and we took them on such huge journeys which was one of the reasons why we're able, and we've heard already today, attract such incredible actors to the show. So really proud of that. And also just leaning into notions of community and the power of what that collective can do together. I think we've all experienced our own small version of Lockup over the past year and a half now. And you do get to know and react with people differently because you are all in it together. So I've been thinking about that a bit lately.
Yeah. I sort of feel we're all aware of the violence and brutality, the girl on girl fighting action, doing what boys would normally do. But I think what it was at the core of it the whole way through that I really love, and it resonates with me, it's friends, family and love, particularly the H1 unit. But that always came back to the core of the show, that it really was about where you find your family. And I think that was really strong.
And Penny, will that be the enduring legacy of Wentworth?
I think all the things that I've said, the fact and Jo, it's a really strong Australian drama that resonated around the world, where it was female focused, strong women who looked like all women out there in society, and it'll keep on going. The success it's had on streaming platforms around the world, and the fans who are phenomenal, the long tail on the show, I think is going to be quite extraordinary.
Last word to you, Jo Porter. What's the enduring legacy of Wentworth?
Oh gosh, look, we were reflecting on this when we were coming up to how do we end it, and we had lots of conversations about it. And what was the big message that we wanted to leave the audience with. And I think the writers have done a beautiful job in honouring the whole arc of the season. We were acutely aware, all of us, about the respect that our audience had given us to stay with us for 100 episodes. And we wanted to return that favour and really try to deliver them a satisfying ending that was like a favourite book that I won't give any spoilers. I should shut up now, but we sort of really thought about it that way, so that it was a place where they could feel some satisfaction in what they'd gone on, but maybe keep the potential to project forward themselves for those characters that they loved.
That's a beautiful way for us to wrap up. So Jo, Marcia, Penny, can I take this opportunity of thanking you, because the three of you are the absolute pillars of Wentworth. Your craftsmanship, your artistry, your commitment and professionalism, and your pure creative genius is just extraordinary. And thank you for giving Foxtel and giving Australia and the world such an extraordinary show. Thanks for joining us today.
Very kind.
Thank you.
Well, as many of you know, Wentworth fans are some of the most loyal and passionate you can find, though I imagine it'll be pretty tough for them when the credits roll on the final episode. But the blow might be softened with the release of a new book, Wentworth on File, featuring revealing interviews with some of the cast members. Next up, I'll be talking to the book's author, Erin McWhirter, but first, let's hear from the cast about some of their memorable interactions with fans.
When we started it, there's absolutely no way on God's green earth I would have thought we would have had people all over the world watching this show.
I don't think I've seen anything like the reaction that you get from them. It's instantaneous, you know, as soon as something's gone to air, they're on their socials talking about it. I've never been involved in a project that has such a groundswell of love and support.
This was some fan art that was sent to me. Is it a bit shiny? You can see it. It says Vinegar Tits. And this is me. This is Vera Bennett, and this says Vinegar Tits.
Like, the drawings are great. I actually get really chuffed whenever one comes my way.
I think my favourite thing that I've ever been sent from a fan was chocolate moulds of their butt. Yeah, I think, I guess some very dedicated fan wanted me to eat their butt.
It's a really deep affection that they have for the show, and the show deeply affects them, and they kind of live for the show.
I would say the fans probably helped with getting season 8 and 9 up, really.
Nothing like the fans. Erin McWhirter, welcome. Tell us about this incredible keepsake, the story of Wentworth on File. How did you become involved in the new book?
Well, I've been a journalist covering Wentworth since 2013 when it first aired, so it seemed like a natural progression to bring a book to the fans. Obviously, they love the show. The show will be there forever, but being able to dive deep into the show behind the scenes and bring that to the fans was the main purpose of it. So working with Foxtel, HarperCollins and Fremantle to bring it to life, and having the privilege of being able to write it.
How on earth did you do the research for this book? Did you talk to a lot of the cast? Just tell us about that process.
I did. I spoke to, I think all up it was 15 interviews over a few weeks, and they were in-depth interviews, which was great. But, you know, I love the show. I'm a fan myself, so I wanted to know extra bits and pieces that we didn't know from over the seasons, and I think I've been able to draw that out and put it in a book that the fans will love.
Let me ask you this, what did you learn that you didn't know?
Gosh, there's so much in there, Brian. I know you've read it, so there would have been things I hope that you saw as well. But I think, you know, the intensity of Wentworth and what the scenes that the women and the men have to play in that, there were so many stories about in the green room where they'd swap outfits. So Jackie Brennan, who plays Smiles on there, would put the teal on, and Pamela Rabe has an alter ego called Louise, apparently, and she's this young girl with pigtails and a teddy bear who comes into the green room, and they said she was the Freak's, like, long-lost daughter. So it's those moments and many more like that fans will read in the book.
Is there a cast member that surprised you when you were doing the research on them?
I think because I've interviewed them all for so long now, there wasn't anyone that surprised me, but I think for the fans, if they were to meet some of the cast, I think definitely Pamela. The cast would agree with me as we spoke that she is definitely very much unlike her character, as is Katrina, who plays Boomer. So there wasn't anyone who surprised me per se, but I think if fans were to meet those two actresses, they'd be shocked at how different they are to their characters.
You know, we've covered a lot of territory today, but I think one of the enduring things about Wentworth is that it does have a lot of heart. Do you think that's right after having researched and written this book?
Absolutely. And I know that a lot of the cast spoke about this before too, but family is so key and integral to Wentworth, the storylines, but also behind the scenes. As they said, they went through so much personally together and filming those scenes. So yeah, it's got a lot of heart, and it's great to see. I mean, Wentworth will live on beyond the final episodes. New people are messaging me on social media saying they're only just starting to watch it now. So yeah, it definitely has that legacy there.
Well, it's a great book. I have read it, and the anecdotes and the stories, the things that you don't know from watching the show are all in this publication. Congratulations. And it's on sale in most bookstores and online.
Yeah, it is now. Thanks, Brian.
Erin McWhirter, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We can't forget the legacy that Wentworth will leave. After 9 incredible seasons, it's now time to say goodbye, farewell, and thank you. Let's take a final look at what's ahead of us in the explosive finale at 8:30 p.m. And look out for a special nod to the original prisoner in the closing credits. Thanks for joining us.
It won't be over till I've killed every one of them. We're gonna bum our way out, my way out, my way out.
Fraser just drove into the prison. Over.
Here's a new one. Bomb threat.
What?
You have to call this off. This bomb's going off. She's never going to stop. She will always be a threat. It's only a matter of time before someone finishes what Judy started.
Please, you have to stop it! There is a bomb!
Don't miss the final ever episode of Wentworth. Tonight, 8:30 on Fox Showcase or watch on demand.